Welcome to This Week in the PNFL. I'm your host, Mark Hill, and along for the ride is Mitch Grawl and Dean Chambers. How you doing today, fellas?
Very
fantastic.
All right. So this is our first off-season or in-between show for this 47th, going to the 47th season, I believe. 47 or 48. Rich is always going to kill me on this one. But what we're going to do is cover a couple of things real quick for you guys, what's going on in the PNFL, and talk about some things that went on in the PCFL for their Week 1 games. So if you guys are ready, we're going to jump right into this. So first thing we're going to talk about, obviously, is the PNFL. We just went through the roster cuts over the last weekend. I believe it had been done by Sunday. So if you guys did not have it done by then, you pretty much know that your roster was changed or fixed by Rich, if you want to call it that. So that's been done. Next thing up that we're going through right now is going through the roles, transferring the roles for your players. And what I'm going to do is, I know the guys have been here for a while, they already know, but some of the new coaches get their feet wet with it. So I'm going to have Mitch and Dean discuss that process a little bit. So let's go ahead and start off this segment with Mitch. What's coming up this week? What do the coaches need to know?
Well, the big thing is we got to get our the roles for the anti-aging. I always forget what we call it anymore. But the roles for the anti-aging physicals and all that done this week. And just remember that, if you've got some players that are further along in their careers, longer in the tooth, the percentage of those, winning the dice roll becomes shorter and shorter, or less and less the longer that they're in that anti-aging capacity. So if you're going to transfer roles, it's probably smarter to do it with people that are, further along the anti-aging physical situation versus ones that just, crossed over into that piece, because their percentage is still pretty darn high that they'll pass that physical on just the one role. But I think that's the big thing this week is, I think it's the only thing this week, besides, continuing to, look at the draft pool and all that, but it's getting those transfers for the physicals into Rich.
All right. Dean, let's get your take on this. Go for it.
In that process, like, for example, with mine, I have 4 players that need to take physicals, and 2 of them, and they're the oldest ones of the 4, are very good defensive players that I would like to have play on my team for 2 more years. And then I transferred the other 2. There were 2 free agents I signed last season to fill roles. They're not long-term players anyway. So I transferred roles from them, which means they definitely will retire at the end of the season, to increase the chance that those other 2 players that are of higher value overall will pass their physical, which means they'll play at least this season and 1 more season. So those are decisions each general manager in the league will have to make regarding their older players. And I know there are some teams at Hayes that have a lot more players taking physicals than mine. My team just had 4, but there were, I think, some teams that have like 7 or 8, maybe 9 or 10 players taking physicals. A lot of, some of our teams that have been said to have become, quote, retirement centers was a term that someone used when teams were trading for a lot of aging players.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to make some decisions because, as Mitch said, as the players get older, they face a decreasing chance of passing the physicals. You could transfer no roles and just take your chances on how many of those players pass and don't pass and hope you get lucky, or you could increase the chances of some of your more valuable veteran players. Because when you transfer a role, let's say you transfer 1 role to a player, that player will get 2 roles, and let's say that player only has a 35% chance or whatever of getting the right role to pass the physical. The second role doesn't double that chance, but it increases. I don't know what the actual statistical odds are, but by transferring a role, you dramatically increase the chance of that player on one or two of those roles. If the player has two roles, will pass. So that's the purpose of doing those transfers, and you want to do that to the players that are more valuable, possibly including older players that you want still to come back 2 more seasons. Keep in mind, failing the physical means this coming season is the last season they play for your team, then they will retire. And passing it means they'll play at least 2 more seasons, depending on whether they pass their physical next season. So that's an important consideration to make, to decide, make those decisions as to who you value more among those players and who you'll transfer roles to and from. And transferring roles is optional. You could just post that you're not transferring roles, and all your players, Rich will just roll the dice once and determine based on how the dice roll whether the player passes or fails. And then again, you'll know how many of those players are going to retire at the end of this upcoming season.
Right.
And at the same time, people are not only preparing for the draft, but there's some trading that's going on. I have 4 trades that I'll be posting as soon as Rich opens trading that are agreed on by me and 4 other teams. And I'm sure others are working out trades. And there's been some posts on the trade talk forum about players and picks that are being offered and so on. So that's going on as we speak. Teams are preparing for the draft, scouting the draft pool, and I would also suggest, and we talked about this a bit in the pre-show, I would suggest to everyone look at how many draft picks they have and what positions they're going in. Keep in mind going into this and have a plan to do this rather than just kind of get caught by surprise and draft all your players and realize, oh, I have 63 players on my roster. I need to pick which of these 10 will go on the practice squad. It's a good idea to have a kind of plan beforehand. As I was saying in the pregame show, I have 7 draft picks. 3 of them are going to go on the active roster, and the other 4 are going to go on practice squad. So then you got to know what you're drafting, what you're picking, and what needs you're filling. In my case, what needs I'm filling with those 3 players that will go on my active roster, the top 53, and what positions I'll look to get for either injury insurance at depth or developmental players to fill those 4 practice squad spots, in addition to players currently on my roster that are slated to go on practice squad. That's the other thing, is to look on your current roster. So if your team has, like mine, has 52 players plus 7 draft picks, that's 59, if my math is right. So, I'd have to put at least 6 of those players in practice squad.
Right.
And then you have to get so those things are all things that should be part of your off-season plan. So that, I remember many seasons ago, I kind of signed some free agents when free agency opened, and I had draft picks and drafted the picks, and I ran into 2 problems. One, I had more than 63 players, and then, I got an email from Rich saying, you're over, you're going to have to cut some guys. Well, you wasted points signing players, and then you cut some of those because you had to get down to 63. And then also, looking at, then you have to identify 10 players put in the practice squad. Well, which ones do you put on the practice squad? So those are all things to take into consideration in making those decisions.
All right. And I will say this, that hopefully these guys kind of gave you guys a little insight for the newer coaches, and then refresher for the older coaches. So if there's any other questions you want to go in a little bit more in depth, definitely go to the website and go into the forum, and they'll see a lot of stuff there for that, or just reach out to the coaches in our Discord group or to our WhatsApp group. So that will kind of get you guys going in the right direction, because I still run into the same problems trying to figure out where I need to move roles to. So just something guys be aware of, and keep looking over the rosters, the draft pool, and see what's out there, and try to get your stuff all set up, because it's going to start kicking off real fast, which I know for a fact Mitch loves, because if he had his way, there would be 1 week in between the end of one season and starting the next season. So,
hey, well, I've got the PCFL to keep me busy now, so we can take 3 months to make sure we get through the playoffs in the PCFL if we had to.
All right. So,
And add one point to this. I would advise everyone to get their roles or posting that they're not transferring any roles. Get those posted, soon, because otherwise we'll get I believe the deadline is probably Sunday. We'll get to Sunday and Rich will send out an email. These teams haven't posted their stuff yet, and they need to do it by X time or I'll do it for them. I mean, he posted that this past weekend with the player cuts. He said, get your stuff in by this date or I'll do it for you and it will be final. And, he kind of has to do that. There is a deadline. We just can't. Some people kind of procrastinate and kind of do things at the last minute, and so sometimes Rich has to get kind of strict and say, look, you guys got to get your stuff in, or I'm going to do it for you, and you may not like how I do it. So I would just urge everyone to get that stuff in sooner rather than later.
Yep, definitely. So. All right. Speaking of the PCFL, I don't know if Rich and Rich, oh my God, if Mitch and Dean, they have their stuff up. I was figuring how you guys want to do this. You want to run through the games like we do, PNFL style, going through the scores and running everything down, or you just want a big overview of week one?
I think probably just an overview would probably be good, because I think, when Dean and I were watching a bunch of those games, I mean, there were some key themes that we kind of picked up on that I think differentiated the PCFL from what we're seeing in the PNFL. What do you think, Dean?
Yeah, why don't you describe some of that, and we can maybe not necessarily have to go through all the scores, and no one's really concerned that LSU gets slammed by another CPU team or whatever.
Yeah, well, I know I sent an email out, and I think it might have just been to the coaches that are in the PCFL league, so not everybody, probably saw this. But, the cool thing about, the games that Dean and I watched, and I guess what we watched, maybe 3 or 4 of them together Saturday night, I can't remember. I mean, it wasn't all of them, but it was enough to where you could start.
Yeah, I think we watched 3 games, and Matt joined us.
Yeah.
For his game.
Yeah, so, I mean, we saw enough to where, some things started standing out from game to game. And to me, the thing that really stood out was just the on-field gameplay. And what I mean more specifically is there seemed to be a lot more run after catch. In the league, a lot more broken tackles, with receivers, down the field on slant patterns or some of those timing routes, things like that, more than what we see in the PNFL. The running backs were actually, they talk about, the players with wiggle, they got some wiggle in their hips or what have you. The running backs, it definitely seemed as if they had some more wiggle in this league, or at least, the way the ratings, differentiation that allowed them to seem to have more animation and moves out there, running in between players. You could tell like someone was actually doing juke moves, for crying out loud. So I thought the gameplay made it really fun to watch. Scores were probably a little higher than what we're used to in the PNFL. I mean, not outrageous. I mean, we didn't have, 100 to 65 scores, anything like that. But, I mean, more scores where both teams were in the 30s, things like that, which, like I said, it was fun to watch. Definitely seems to lean a little bit more to the offensive side, which I think, that's been some questions that we've had in the PNFL is that, hey, are we too defensive, or too strong on the defensive side? So it was fun to watch. We'll see what, the rest of these weeks continue to look like. But I'd encourage y'all to take a look at some of the games, or, as we do some of the live streaming. on the weekends. Join us, even if you're not in the league, and just kind of get a sense of what the gameplay looks like. And, again, it could help us as we think about how we want to maybe lobby, Charlie in his ratings going forward. But that's what I'll share, Dean. That's kind of the things that came to my mind from what we saw on the weekend.
Yeah, what I'll say is, one, we do have a new team owner coming in that's taking LSU. That was someone that was on the waiting list, and I asked them to, I don't know if they've done that yet, but to register for the forum and introduce themselves. So we officially have 9 teams out of 18. We're half full. So half full means we start working on becoming more than half full, and we're aiming to have most of our teams filled by the end of the season before we go into recruiting for the next season. Week one went pretty well overall. We had some interesting scores. Now, my team, Tennessee, lost to Florida. Now, you could say there's a bit of realism in that, since Tennessee doesn't beat Florida very often in real life, and that kind of played out on the field in the PCFL as well. Arkansas played Georgia. Now, in real life, with the way those teams, keep in mind, our rosters in the PCFL are all pretty evenly matched. The parity level is such that the worst team in the PCFL is literally 98% as strong in talent as the best. That's the way it was created. Going forward, we will all manage what kind of roster we have with the players that we recruit and how we train them. And training camp is much more important here. Well, I shouldn't say important, but much more crucial in the sense that there's a wider gap between actuals and potentials, and that's how it should be in college, because there's a lot more player development going on in college, whereas in the NFL, the best of those in college, and there's some coaching and development, but, at that point, the players either have the talent to make the NFL or they don't. That's kind of true in the PNFL. So here, these players need a lot more development in training camp, and they would get that. They get either 4 or 5 training camps, depending on whether they redshirt. So we had some interesting games. Arkansas actually upset Georgia, which doesn't seem likely to happen in real life. But, again, our teams are more evenly matched, whereas in real life, Georgia right now is signing mostly blue-chip recruits every season, and Arkansas is not doing so well. And, the coach there is on the hot seat and might get fired, and they brought in the former coach as some kind of assistant coach, and some people think that guy's like coach in waiting. Kind of talk about that with Matt, who's a real-life Arkansas fan and is coaching Arkansas in this league. So we had some interesting results. Michigan won their game, but it was a high-scoring game. It almost looked like it was going to be a replay of Donovan's loss to the Jets in the AFC Championship game. But his team managed to be the one to score last and win that game, whereas the Jets scored last and won the game. So, the scores are a little bit higher, but doesn't that seem a little bit more realistic for college football?
Yeah.
And I will say, the running backs, the difference in the way, and this is as it regards potentials and not actuals, but the one thing that's a little bit different in our ratings model, it's mostly the same as the PNFL for potentials, and then, of course, actuals are a bit lower. Other than the speed is kept pretty consistent so that the use of time passes and things like that still work in our league, since we're designing this, pretty much entirely with PNFL plays, other than the small number of custom plays that are being done in the PCFL, which is, again, for the purpose of, if those plays work, those team owners will submit them in the PNFL, and then if Charlie adds them to the play pool and they approve, then they're available the following PCFL season. But the only thing that was a little bit different in the ratings model as it regarded running backs, or halfbacks, I should say, the maximum ratings under the min-max table, running backs are 2 points in potential. This is potential, not actuals. or 2 points higher in acceleration and agility. That's all the change we're talking. It's a very small change. But what we're seeing, and these are the better running backs that are starting for our teams, as Mitch was pointing out, the running game is a little bit more dynamic, a little more effective. Running backs are a little bit able to make moves and break tackles and break runs. That even for like an inside run, that couple more points of acceleration makes a difference between the running back running 5 or 6 yards before he gets tackled or getting slammed at the line for just a 1 yard gain. And that makes a big difference in the effectiveness. So it's one thing that we're kind of experimenting with a little. The idea was to kind of experiment with that here in the PCFL because I had an idea looking at our running game in the PNFL and looking at the ratings. I thought running backs are kind of low in, I should say halfbacks, but I'm talking running backs. They're kind of low in acceleration and agility. You see even the better running backs in the PNFL might be like 82 speed, 80 acceleration, and maybe 82 or 83 agility. Whereas, our wide receiver, I'm not suggesting they should have as much agility as wide receivers. Our good wide receivers like 89, 90, 91 agility.
Right.
So that's when we're kind of experimenting a little with this little tweaking of the ratings in the PCFL are running, and we've already seen that in the week 1 games. The running game is a little bit more robust, and that might be a bit of balance. It might eventually be a good idea to think about in the PNFL as we see how it plays out, especially when we're going to play a 12-game season. So when you look at how many yards are gained by the leading running backs in the PNFL in 12 games, you can kind of calculate that out to what would those yardage look like if the PCFL played 16 games like the PNFL, and then compare those numbers. And it'll be interesting to see how that compares. So we have 9 teams open. Anyone that is in the PNFL is welcome to join and give it a shot, and maybe jump in this in time for putting together a PPP for week 2. I mean, all you pretty much have to do is just put together something based on your stuff from the PNFL and use it here, and it will work pretty well. So I would advise everyone to give it a shot.
Okay.
Who hasn't taken a team yet.
All right. Anything else you want to add on that, Mitch, or you're pretty much set?
No, I think I shared everything that was on my mind, and I think Dean hit on the stuff that I had forgotten about. So no, I'm good.
Now, if I can ask this question, I know that as you guys are talking, I was going through the site and everything. Now, as far as the logs and custom plays, they're going to be doing that. You're going to be emailing that out, or is that going to be available off the site? I know that there's still some work has to do on the site, I think a couple things, but that's going to be emailed normal as in the PNFL, or what's your format for that?
I did send out stuff on what was it, Saturday or was it Sunday? I think it was Sunday. I did send out stuff. For custom plays, Colorado is testing using Charlie's goal line log plays, and I submitted plays. Now another team submitted plays today for week 2.
Okay.
So those will be after week 2, but everyone should have, if I sent those out correctly, everyone should have received the copy of the league files, the logs in the games, and kind of like the way Rich sends those out weekly, and then the zip of the custom plays.
Now, for the PPPs, I guess for the computer teams, I know you mentioned that those will be available. Is that on the website as well, or is that going to be in your download section for those that are going to be looking at that to practice against?
Yeah, it will be, and also I emailed those all out. Do you have those? I emailed them out, and the new owner that just joined, I sent him a copy of those files too.
All right, just
I'm going to email them, so I'm going to email them out to everyone again, but I know I've sent them out at least once. I can email them again.
Yeah, because I'm sure someone may ask that question, so just trying to get as much information out for those. And if you guys are listening to this and you are not associated with the PNFL, or you're not associated with the PCFL, you just happen to have this pop up in your feed and you're interested in the league, the site for the PCFL, which is our college league, is pcfl.site. There are some open teams available. And then we have our main league, which is the PNFL.biz. I do believe there is a waiting list on that site. But if you're interested, reach out to the commish. You'll see it in the coaches section, and you can email it to them. Also, if you want to know a little bit more what we're doing, just check out some of our previous podcasts with the three of us and kind of get a little insight on what we do in our league, and try to keep this game that's been out since 1998 still going in 2024. So that's a long ride. So as we are coming to shut this down for this week and going into week 2 in the PCFL, we're going to run this around the table again one last time. We're going to start with Dean.
Yeah, I would just urge everyone to, if you're interested, check it out. It's pcfl.site, like you said, which is .site. And we have 9 open teams, and we're hoping to fill those soon. And it's not only keeping the game alive, but keeping it alive, because in the past we had numerous NFL-based leagues as well as numerous college football leagues, and we're bringing that aspect back to the PNFL community as well. So, and we hope this will strengthen the PNFL and be a place. We already have one person who's on the waiting list taking a team in the PCFL, and anyone else who comes in, can come in and start coaching a team in the PCFL, and then be even more prepared once an opening comes up in the PNFL to also step up and do that. And it is okay, and it is possible. Most of us that are in the PCFL are in both. It's okay to be in both as well.
Okay. Mitch, any final words before you close us out?
I'll just echo what Dean said. If you want to pass a little time and keep your football juices flowing, join in. I don't think you have to feel bad if you don't put as much time and energy into the college league experimentation that we're doing versus the PNFL, but keeps it fun, and it keeps the camaraderie going watching some of these games. So that's all I'll say about that. So Mark, I think the only thing left to do is let's get it.